Rita Tinina, KTN News.
All right, and it's time now for Political Point. It's 8 minutes after 7, and well, the political temperatures in the country are far from calming. After a 3-month recess, the two legislative houses resume business today. With already Jubilee and NASA maintaining their hardline positions, showdown, drama, and sideshows looms in the chambers. Already, the opposition maintains that they do not recognize the legitimacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta and his government. On the other hand, Jubilee, which enjoys the tyranny of numbers in both houses, has dared the opposition and has threatened to conduct House business minus NASA's input. But who will play the oversight position if the boycott persists? Still, NASA leader Raila Odinga now wants all diplomats to keep off Kenyan affairs and stop meddling in local affairs. What exactly is the role of foreign envoys? Are they just the president's men and women? Welcome to the Political Point, and I'll start first of all by introducing our guests this morning, and I'll start with my extreme left, where we have Barack Muluka, who's a governance expert. Good morning, and thank you for joining us,
Mike.
sir.
Thank you.
All right, we also have Professor Wajakoya, who's an advocate. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, and we're going to start with that tiff that we seem to have between, or that disagreement between NASA leader Raila Odinga having dismissed the Western envoys, demanding that they first acknowledge President Kenyatta's presidency and adhere to the Constitution and rule of law before calling for dialogue. The opposition chief has further called on the diplomats to stop meddling in Kenyan affairs.
We want to tell them in clear terms, no uncertain terms, Kenya is an independent country, and Kenyan problems will be resolved by the Kenyan people. They can only be but observers. Wakenya hawajaambia Amerika rais yao ni nani. Hatujaambia Waingereza waziri mkuu yao ni nani. Hatujaambia Ujerumani waziri mkuu yao ni nani. Wawaje kuambia Wakenya tu rais wa Kenya ni nani. Wakenya wenyewe wanajua, sio?
All right, so that's what the opposition leader Raila Odinga had to say. And before we come to what he exactly had to say, maybe let's first of all try and understand and find out what exactly is the role of diplomats in the country. Let me start with you, Professor Wajakoya.
Thank you very much, and I hope my students at USIU, who I teach international law, are going to listen to these few words. The international law itself is governed by the various charters. One of it is the United Nations Human Rights Convention. We have also the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, and also the UN Charter. It's very, very clear that when it comes to issues of sovereignty, no country is bigger than the other, in which case interference in domestic affairs of another country is an issue that can only be resolved at diplomatic level, not diplomats coming in to meander into the country's activities. And there is also a protocol to be followed, whereby if they have any grievances, then they have to pass through the right channels as per the diplomatic convention. Secondly, they also have a right to observe, but that observation should not be two-sided. We have seen from the day when elections were declared, Godek, who is also my ambassador in the US, who is also my representative from the US by virtue of disposition that I'm a US permanent resident, has no right in law, unless he's speaking from his own side of the mouth to interfere into the sovereignty of Kenya. All he has to do is to guide, come from the middle, and probably make some kind of observation.
Having said that, you've mentioned that they have a responsibility, or they are allowed to observe, but does that necessarily mean that they stay mute? Is throwing in their comments or maybe weighing in on what is best practice seen as interference? Well,
we have seen contradictions before. The first endorsement of Uhuru Kenyatta's government before the elections was annulled was by the same people. It was not until the EU raised the issue, it was not until Ambassador Kome, the lady who actually flew back to New York, came up and said that there was a discrepancies, that the diplomats again changed the direction. It's from that flip-flopping that raises a lot of concern. I mean, they have a right to say, but there is the right channels to pass, and at the same time also they must be very, very sure not to divide the country. Like what they're saying right now is actually telling Raila to to swallow his rights, to swallow the constitution, and that's not really a very, very good thing for a diplomat to come up, especially where there have been contradictions.
All right. Barack, you're weighing in on this. Are they interfering, and are they going beyond their role and jurisdiction when they weigh in and comment on what they feel possibly might be a disregard of the rule of law?
The various conventions, protocols, and international agreements that Professor Wajakoya talks about recognize that ambassadors, high commissioners, in any foreign country to represent the interests of their countries. They are sent here as representatives of their governments, and particularly representatives of the highest officers in their lands. And so they come here to represent their interests and not to play prefecture over us. In that context, the ambassador of the United States of America is not in any sense superior to the High Commissioner of Uganda or Tanzania or the ambassador of Rwanda or Burundi to Kenya. They operate on the same pedestal, at the same level, with the same rights and the same limitations. It is therefore a matter of prime concern that nations that consider themselves to be economically superior arrogate to themselves the non-existent powers of being prefects in countries such as ours. And this itself speaks to the reality that we are either a fragile state or a failing state, or perhaps even a failed state. That is the only time when you find somebody who thinks they are superior to you, arrogating to themselves those powers that they do not have. And we submit that the Americans, the EU, have got no legitimate authority at all to tell us, do it this way or do it the other way.
All right, Professor Wajakoya, he brings out an interesting point there, Barack, that we have other foreign missions in the country. However, when it comes to matters, especially politics, they are normally very quiet. They don't say much. And it seems like the American and the British High Commission are more vocal. And we sometimes feel like they play an oversight role. It's like their big brother. What do you think is the genesis of that?
Actually, I have to agree with my brother Muluka, my elder, and I totally support what he has said. That is the law. That's how it ought to be. But what we need to look at is the neocolonialist theories, which comes in terms of preponderance of economic realization. The dependency theory that has come out that comes out now under the new world order comes with the tenets of bulldozing, and we have these freedoms of open market theories, whereby we depend on what we are given, we depend on what we are told. We listen to what you are told, and there is this big brother syndrome in that if the Americans have said, the British have said, who are you? That ought to go through the window. And that's why I like the likes of Mugabe in those old days when they realized that it was not really very okay for us to be cajoled, to be following. I live in the West. I live in UK. I live in the US. And there's no single day I've had a Kenyan High Commission in London or a Kenyan ambassador to Washington, D.C. coming in to commingle in American elections, or even to comment on what goes in America. Actually, it will be sacrificed by Congress, and the media will not spare either. Therefore, this issue of dependency theory and having that neocolonialist kind of philosophy ought to end. What's wrong with an ambassador or the Swaziland High Commissioner also being called in the group to give directions? The we and them theory is coming in. They have melted their own pot, and they want that pot to actually be broken into Africa. And we have seen what has happened in the West. When they come in, they want their way. If we don't do as they say, we end up. We have seen eras during the Cold War of coup d'etats. We have also seen the emergence of new constitutional order, which we have to be told to do. I think we are ripe enough to do our own things.
To do our own things. Okay, Barack, and there is the saying that he who pays the piper plays the tune or calls the tune. And this basically would suggest that the West probably feels that they have an oversight role because they have a lot of investment. Albeit, according to Raila, he mentioned that their interest is more actually to take away. Is it possible that they feel they have that oversight role because of the amount of investment that they bring in, whether it is in form of aid, in form of, you know, whatever help that they give to Africa as a whole, not just Kenya?
You see, this is a manifestation of new guises of colonialism. That which we call colonialism has never gone away, right from the old colonial system, the mercantile system, the new colonial system, and what now in social science is referred to as neo-colonialism. That these people we see here are here to tap, to exploit, to extract, and to take away. And they're just concerned that the pace of things in this country now does not allow them to exploit to the same pace and at the same speed that they would want, and therefore any settlement that looks possible at the earliest time possible is good enough for them. What they are forgetting is that we are talking about things that they probably have not taken time to understand. We are talking about an emerging ethnic hegemony in Kenya. And this is very dangerous, both for the hegemonist and for those who are placed under that hegemony, because you cannot sustain it. The ethnic hegemony that Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto are trying to establish in this country is going to cause this country to implode. If it does not implode today, it's going to implode in the next 3 years, the next 5 years, or the next 10 years.
It's a ticking time bomb.
It's a time bomb. Kenyatta may even have vacated the seat of power when that implosion takes place. And these are things that we cannot sweep under the carpet. They are things which we must address. You cannot tell somebody to vacate their stand on a certain issue so that they can then have the opportunity to discuss that issue. Someone is saying here that we are contesting the manner and nature of the arrival of Uhuru Kenyatta to the presidency for a second time. That is the bone of contestation. And you are saying that
from the foreign
it.
missions, their point is, can we all just abide and stick to the rule of law? Yes, you have a right as the opposition or as a Kenyan to contest and bring up issues that you possibly have, but within a stipulated rule of law and abiding by the Constitution.
Absolutely. It depends on which end of the stick you are holding, because we must ask the question, at what point has the rule of law been aborted? If, for example, you are intimidating the electoral authority, even when it is saying that it has no faith in itself and no confidence that it's going to deliver a free, fair, and credible election, are we still operating within the parameters of the rule of law? When you tell the Supreme Court that you are going to streamline it, you intimidate the judges and call them wakora, and tell them that you will deal with them if the outcomes of their decisions do not go a certain way. Are we still operating within the coordinates of the rule of law? So it becomes a very vicious kind of argument and cycle, and therefore the need for the conversation that certain quarters have been asking for.
All right, and Wajakoya, to be fair, there has been a battering of the institution from both ends, depending on what season and where we are. We have had the opposition even come out, for instance, at one time they're on record as saying that this is the time for the Supreme Court to prove itself, suggesting that previously they probably had, gone a rogue way. Isn't that the point where then we would expect the international community not to dictate, but to just call and say as a third party, as a non-interested party, this is the best practice?
I think the international community, as you have said, has leverage over everything. Before I answer your question, you find out that these people actually manipulate systems, and they come in with what we call psychic fear. the fear of the unknown is always a very dangerous fear than the one that one knows of. We have the issue of traveling, traveling or banning traveling, sales of property, and freezing of accounts of those who do not toe the line. And when they come out with that kind of carrot, that itself inflicted what one can apprehend as an immediate fear. Having said that, the opposition also is not to be told to be doing or paving the way to heaven. They're equally to blame because they also have to observe the rule of law. I'm very sure that when Raila Odinga and his group came up and they said that their eyes are focused on the Supreme Court, their eyes are focused. If they don't, then the people will have to go on the streets. You remember when the issue of Hassan came up, the former IEBC chairman. That in itself also called into question as to the legitimacy of the opposition who were trying to fight to be custodians of liberty and whose direction every Kenyan was looking at. So when you look at double standards played also by the opposition, we should not just only look at what Jubilee is doing. Let's look at the opposition and find out, are they holier than thou? Are their proclamations holier than thou? Will they want to cajole people and twist people's minds in case the thing does not go their way? But as the government also has got the legitimacy of doing what it does into interrogating and invading the constitutional space and civil liberties.
All right. Okay, and it is now 24 minutes after 7, and we want to take a short break. And when we come back, we will look further into the role of foreign missions in the country. But also, we do have Parliament resuming, and we do know that NASA members of Parliament have been on strike, as it were, from Parliament. And how is that going to play out, given that we already have cabinet nominees who seem to be sailing through quite easily, given that the opposition is not there to play their oversight role? Those are some of the things we're going to be discussing, but also giving you an opportunity to weigh in on the subject matter today on Political Point. For now, we take a break. Do stay with us. We'll be right back.